Welcome, Megan, to the Working Mumma podcast. How's your day going so far?
Thank you. Good. Yeah, I had a good morning, had a walk on the beach, and yeah, can't complain. Good start to the day. I'm excited for our conversation.
So am I. So I've been following you, and actually, I'm fangirling right now a little bit for a little while. But those of you that don't know, the listeners that don't know you, who are you and how would you best describe yourself?
So I am a mother, single mum. I am an author. I am a founder and CEO of Women Rising, a women's leadership and empowerment company. I'm a seeker. I'm a yogi. Yeah, I live a simple life and I'm very passionate about helping women rise.
Fantastic. And you've had a really interesting career journey to get to where you are today and to be the founder and CEO of Women Rising. What's been your career journey?
So I started off, I ended up in corporate for 18 years, but I didn't start there. I never had a dream of, being a corporate executive. Does anybody? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
When we're little girls, I grew up as an actress and a dancer and a singer and a writer, and I sang in bands and did all these cool stuff. And all I ever wanted to do was be an actress. And that was my whole childhood. And I finished high school and went to performing arts college and then, was pursuing that. And then a whole bunch of things happened in my early 20s that kind of put me off that path and put me into corporate. So it was the most random thing. If you had have said to me when I was 18, you're going to be this, big corporate executive traveling the world, I would have committed you somewhere. But I ended up at GE in their electronic commerce business way before electronic commerce and e-business and everything was a thing. And that was the start of my corporate career. And I ended up in marketing. I ended up working when I was 25. I was marketing communications manager for the electronic commerce business of GE across Asia. So I would spend for about 5 years, 3 weeks out in Asia and the US, 1 week back in Australia. Did that for 5 years. Was crazy, but I loved it, pre-children. Um, and then I went to PricewaterhouseCoopers and worked for the consulting business there, and then got bought through acquisition by IBM and ended up in IBM for 12 years. And in between, I got married, had a baby. I'm trying to get the order right. Got married, had a baby, got divorced when my son was 18 months old and I was 31. He's 23 now, so you can do the math. A long time ago. And yeah, just had that juggle and struggle of being a single working mother, being a young executive, driving and striving for all of the things. And I completely burnt myself out. So that we can talk about that if that's interesting. And then 11 years ago, I left IBM. I was the head of strategy at the time to start my own company and have been doing work specifically around women's leadership, women's empowerment, women's well-being, writing books, teaching, coaching, leading for the last 11 years.
Amazing. So many elements to that. And also, I've got personal elements because I've also been in marketing communications and I'm also now in strategy. So, a lot of that I can actually
Okay.
relate back into in terms of career journey and things like that. So, just quickly on your burnout, what was that experience like? And how did you recognize that you were going through burnout? And how did you, I guess, come out of that probably bubble and cloud of burnout?
Yeah, again, it's really interesting, right? Because our life makes so much sense when we look back. And when I look back from even when I was like 19, I had this drive and strive, what I call drive and strive energy, like that, ambitious, not ambitious for outwardly things, but just driven because I was so passionate about the things. And there were all these things, when I was 21, I had chronic fatigue syndrome. Before they knew what it was, I was in bed. Yeah, I was bedridden for 6 months. I was so ill. And then the slow path of coming out of that. And then all of these little, what I would call mini burnouts between like 25 and 35 when I hit the wall. And, when I finally hit the wall to the point that I can't push through this anymore, my son was 6. I'd just come back on another trip to New York, and I was just so sick. I had thyroid issues. I had a heart issue, and I just knew I was like at the end, and I'd been trying to push through for so long. And that day, I remember so clearly, I drove into the car park of my office at IBM, called my mum on the phone and said, like, I just don't think I can do this for one more minute. Thinking that she'd say, oh, no, it's okay. You'll be fine. Have a rest, take a weekend off, whatever. And she said, of course you can't, Megan. You have no life. And I'll never forget it. And I literally went up in the elevator, walked into my boss's office, who was the CEO, and I said, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Can't do it for one more minute. And then started going through the process of re-engineering my life. But it's interesting, and anyone who's gone through burnout may relate to this. Like I took 2 months off. I negotiated to come back in the director of strategy role, which was a newly created role because I was trying to do director of marketing and director of strategy, and negotiated a 4-day work week. But then I came back in with exactly the same work patterns and habits. And so like it took, I would say, years for me to finally get the memo of you actually have to change everything to set yourself up. And you have to really, my journey was about really, truly understanding myself, my patterns, my drivers, and what like optimal well-being and optimal working life would look like for me. And it's a daily process still to this day. Yeah.
So you had to do a lot of that work internally and understanding yourself and all the impacts and the external factors. Because it's, you can have that 4-day work week. Yep, sounds all good. But you really had to work on yourself and almost undo everything that you've probably learnt over the previous 18 years.
Yeah. For me, it was a process of a number of things. And it really is, it's so interesting when I look at my work and how my work, what I teach and what I coach and what I write about has come together over the last 15 plus years. I came out of that period, and the way, like, one of my strengths is love of learning and curiosity. Um, and I wanted to understand the science and the practice of how we thrive as women. Like, how do we pursue passionate work and be mothers and have our own spiritual life or whatever it is that's interesting, for us. So I went and did the first thing I did after my burnout. I went to my yoga teacher training because I was always interested in yoga, but I wanted to go really deep into the practice and this, the spirit of it all. I went and did a second master's degree in wellness and positive psychology because, again, I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to understand the research and the science and proven practices. And those two things together, like I always talk about my work as science, spirit, and experience, that fusion. And that's really been the journey of understanding what does the science have to tell us, whether it's positive psychology, neurobiology, leadership science, gender science, well-being science. And then how do we sort of integrate that with what's right for us in practice, and then bring that together in the most optimal way, which is different for all of us.
Yeah, it certainly is. So what has been some of those really key things that you've learnt through that of how women can thrive?
The first thing I always say is, it's actually, I was talking to someone yesterday. It's on my notepad here, like clarity. It has to start with clarity. Like, where am I at? What do I want? What do I value? How do I thrive? Like, what does thriving look like and feel like for me? Even if we are so far away from that now, like, what's a time when I was thriving? What was I doing? And most important, clarity around, like, what are my values? What does alignment look like? And what do I want my life to look like? And so often as women, we skip past all of that to get to the fix. Or we don't spend time on those things because we're just so busy doing all of the things for all of the people and taking care of everything that there is no us in that equation.
No, usually the equation, the picture doesn't look like what do we want? It's what does everyone else want?
Yes.
And there's nothing
Yeah.
left in the cup for us.
There's nothing left. So, like I literally coach thousands of women every year. And we always start, like in my Women Rising model, I always start with life vision. Like, what is the vision for how you want your life to be? And all of the elements of that, whether it's your family life, your career, your spiritual life, your creative life, connection, community, whatever it is, what do you want that to look like? And we hear this so often, but when do we do it? When do we carve out that time to really sit and think about what do I want for myself? So that's where we start. And within that, I always talk about meaning and purpose. Like where do you find meaning in your work?
Yeah.
What feels purposeful for you? And how do you make sure that you have those elements in your days? It doesn't need to be all day, but that you have some of those elements in your day. So yeah, that's step one.
Fantastic. And well, you've actually just written a book, and I have to say, Women Rising. I've just received a copy. Highly recommend, because I've only read a few pages. Lots of light bulb moments that even just in a 5 minutes of reading it and just flicking through it is amazing. And what you've said about mum's identity that's there, a lot of that as well, and I agree with what you've written in the book. There's so much about the society's expectations, the patriarchal systems, about what the messages we're given as mums, about what we need to be doing and what we should be doing. I often say should is like a swear word for mums, because really, as you say, we need to be doing what makes us also happy. How can we, and through your research as well, you've said about the different paradoxes of womanhood and things like that. Through that and through your research as well, what have you observed has been those biggest impacts on the role of a mother and also then role of a woman in society? And how does this then differentiate between men and women? So that's a lot in that, I know.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a big topic, right? And the first part of the book is all around the forces that hold us back. So it's in three parts: the forces that hold us back, the stories that keep us stuck, and the tools that help us rise. So it's like the external, the internal, and then what do we do about all of that to create, what we want for ourselves. When it comes to motherhood specifically, there's 6 paradoxes of power that I write about in that first section, like the patriarchal constructs and the gender norms and gendered expectations, societal expectations, and how that sets women up to fail across lots of different areas. And one of those is the motherhood paradox. And I describe this for working mothers as, we expect you to work like you don't have children, and we expect you to mother like you don't have a job
The
outside
famous the famous Annabelle Crabb quote, yeah.
right? Well, yeah, even before Annabelle
Before,
Crabb,
yeah.
right? We've been talking about this. So, but when I say that to women, like so many light bulbs go off, because we should all over ourselves. We expect so much of ourselves. We expect that we should be the perfect mother and the perfect worker and fit into that ideal worker, ideal leader model. And we beat the shit out of ourselves. I mean, that's true as all mothers and working mothers who work outside the home as well as inside the home. And so part of this is really understanding that there is a paradox at play here when we're trying to either survive in our careers or build our careers or get to the next level or just survive the juggle. Because it is, and I've lived it as a single mother, incredibly challenging and can be soul destroying, right? And like there is no you in that picture. It's
No.
just run on that treadmill as fast as you can. Don't look left, don't look right, because you'll fall off.
And don't stop. You've got to keep running.
And don't stop. Like there is no pause. There's no breath. Just go. And this is what the patriarchy has set up for women. But so often as women, we don't see that at the external. We just blame and shame ourselves that why doesn't my life feel so great? Or why am I feeling resentful towards my family? Or why do I hate my boss? Because they just don't get it. Yeah. Like we put all of that on ourselves. And what I really want women to understand is This is the patriarchal construct where women are not set up to succeed and at worst case set up to fail.
Yeah.
And what I find is that when we can really start to understand that, when we can sort of see the machinations of the world that we live in, number one, it takes the pressure off of us, that it's not just us. And then we can look at, okay, well, what do I do with all of that? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the motherhood paradox.
Yeah, it's certainly like, do you see that also different to obviously fathers and men on how they view themselves as well? So obviously women take on a lot. It's well researched about how much we carry the load, run the household and things like that. It's also where some of that burnout I know a lot of women also feel is
Yeah.
not necessarily from a workplace perspective, but also from the exhaustion of running the household
Yes.
as well. And it seems to be that even as flexible work has increased and support has increased for, say, fathers taking parental leave and the like, women are still bearing that load because of these systems. Are you also seeing that from your research and your work as well? And I know you do a lot of work with male allies,
Yeah.
but as well around trying to get men to understand the motherhood paradoxes as well.
Yeah. And I write about this because this is a really important conversation. And men need to be in it. And they need to be in it in a safe and inclusive way, not a divisive way like you're to blame, men, for all of the problems that women face, because that's just not true, right? Like the patriarchy in many ways hurts men as much in different ways as it hurts women. So, like, let's be really clear on that. What we see from all of the research is, and I see this in practice as well with the men that I work with and the stories from the women that I work with and inside organizations is, yes, there is pressure on men and there are gender norms for men and for fathers, but they don't limit men in the same way that they impact women and limit women. So that's the first thing. The second thing is women still bear the burden. We see it in all the data. When you look at even when there is a woman and a man in a relationship and they have kids and they both work full time outside the home, we still know that women still take the lion's share of the children, the planning, the household, and everything that comes with it. So, like this is one of the things that needs to share. And one of the first things I say to male allies that we work with in the Women Rising Male Allies program is the first thing that you can do to be a male ally is look at what are you doing at home? Before you even think about what you're doing in the workplace, what are you doing at home? Are you babysitting your kids? Or are you equal co-parenting? Right? This term that we still hear, it does my head in. Oh, yeah, I'm babysitting the kids tonight. They're your children, right?
You're being a farmer.
You're being a father. So what's happening at home? What's happening with the chores? Are you on the list at school? Like just the basic things. How are you sharing that load? What are the agreements that you're making at home and how are you supporting your partner? And then what's happening in the workplace, right? Like
Yeah.
we have to start there. Yeah. And we've got to really unpack and demystify the ways that the gender norms and constructs at work limit men as well. Like we know that there is bias about men who take more active roles in fatherhood, who take extended parental leave, like all of these things impact men as well. And we have to fix all sides of the equation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, I guess, unpacking hundreds and thousands of years and the way that of just evolution of roles. And really, we're trying to unpack it in probably the last 50 years, really, since women have been able to, get a bank account on their own and actually more active in the workplace over the last 50, 60 years as well.
Yeah. And this, I mean, my primary work in the world is about women. Like I study women, I research women, I teach and coach, all of the things, write about women for women. And at the same time, like this next frontier of women's empowerment has to be with the men, has to be. You know, I've got a whole chapter in the book called What About the Men to really break down for women, but also for men, because a lot of men will read this book, to demystify what allyship looks like and to get men to really try and understand women's lived experience, whether that's their wife at home and her lived experience about being a working mom or, whatever the situation is, peers, team members, leaders at work, really starting to understand the landscape for women, the challenges for women, and their active role in supporting women at work, at home, in society.
Yeah, 100%. You can't create the change. And it's funny because, like, all the women, you get a group of women in the room, everyone knows what needs to change. So, but it's actually then bringing those male allies along for the journey. I was actually remember speaking at a part of a panel at a conference 12 months ago, and was probably the room was about 90% males, and we're talking about diversity and things. And I actually asked them the question, what are you doing to actually help the women in your team, the women in your life and things like that? It was a 2-day conference, and actually a few of the men came up to me after it and said, "Thank you so much for actually saying it the way that you did." They actually reflected and they're going, "Yeah, what am I doing?" And then a father said, "I want to play more of an active role in doing childcare drop-off and pickups." And he said, "I went home that night and then had a conversation with my wife." And I was like, "Look, yes, even if it's that little ripple, if it's just starts with one conversation and also about what the men want to do." I was like, I'm happy, job done for that conference and things. But
Yeah.
it's so right. We've got to, it can't just be having a conversation with all the women in the room. 50% of the population is men. We also need their support to actually change the systems that we already have around us, both at home and in the workplace.
Yeah. And look, here's the bottom line, right? And I write this I wrote this. I thought, oh, do I really want to say this? But it's the truth. Like, we can't get there without the men.
No,
That's the bottom line. And, it sounds like a terrible thing to say as a card carrying feminist. But when it comes to women's empowerment, we can't get there without the men. We're
no,
never going to get to equality
no.
without the men being there and driving the change with us. So, yeah, like, we have to really embrace this change. And from an organizational perspective, I mean, that's it. Change happens in the middle, right? So, like, where are all those men in middle management? They're the ones who we're working with.
Yeah, which is it's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
Are there any other key I guess it's all the paradoxes that you write about, really define and confine us, to, and probably in a way also probably sabotage ourselves of where we want to be as both as a mother, but also then having a career.
Yeah, look, it's all of them. I mean, there's 6. There's the empowerment paradox, which is around, we expect women to be empowered in systems that disempower them. I mean, it all starts there, right? We look at women at work, we look at women in society, and we think, well, if you can't succeed, then that's on you. Well, no, it's not on women. It's on the system that we're operating in.
Yeah.
Things like we talk about imposter syndrome, and yes, imposter syndrome is very real, but it's also imposter system. How can women not feel like imposters in systems that were never designed for them to succeed in?
And actually allow the system to support them as well.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the leadership paradox, we want you to lead, but not like that. Like, if you're going to lead inside a workplace, then make sure that your leadership fits into this box of what an ideal leader looks like, which is typically masculine and male.
But
Right?
don't behave like the males, because even if
But
you
don't
see,
behave like the males.
because
Yeah.
otherwise then you're the female bully, but it's okay for a male to act that way.
Yeah. And it's the double bind, it's the likability penalty. It's, women can be seen as competent or likable, but really both. And all of the data that comes around that we see through gender norms, patriarchal constructs, gendered expectations in workplaces, everything a man does, and all those masculine traits, beautiful masculine traits that we all need, they align perfectly with what we expect from a leader.
Mm.
But the gender norms for women are that you will be kind and nurturing and communal and take care of everybody. And those traits do not align with what we think a leader looks like. So a lot of the work that I've been doing for the last 15 years is around bringing in this concept of feminine and masculine traits. I was talking about it way before anyone was like, what are you talking about? When I was at IBM, they're like, huh? I remember the first time I presented on positive leadership, new leadership to the executive team at a bank. And I was presenting, some research at the time, not my research, meta research from the Athena doctrine that the world would be a better place if men thought more like women. And like they all nearly fell off their chair. Going into the data around this is what new leadership looks like. But this is the conversation, right? Feminine, masculine traits, all genders. We all have them. How do we change the dynamic of leadership and what we expect from leaders so that women can show up authentically in that versus just keep hitting this barrier of, oh, no. We want you to lead, but don't lead like your authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's others. So yeah, but you can see like at every level that these, like I talk about the knots that tangle women's progress, and these paradoxes, like fit right into that.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for women who feel trapped by some of these paradoxes? So we've been talking about like the challenges and I guess those knots. How can we start to untie those knots to allow women to thrive and to be able to, be their true selves if they want to, say be a mum and also have a career?
I mean, there's so much that we can do. There's so much that women do every single day. One of the things I'm really passionate about, and one of the reasons I wrote this book is because I want women to see the world that they live in. And it's not about being pessimistic or doom and gloom. It's not that, right? Like I'm an eternal optimist, in all of my research and work. But it is about understanding that it's not just us. Like the thing that I hear more than anything else from women in the Women Rising program when they come in and they're with, 1,500 women and they all have the same thought that it's just me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who struggles with confidence issues. I'm the one who can't balance my work and home life. I'm the one who feels like a guilty mother. I'm the one who keeps hitting up against leadership barriers and authenticity barriers at work. And what they very quickly realize is it's not just you, it's all of us. And it's across age and culture and industry, all different types of family situations. It's all of us, right? So the reason the paradoxes are so important is so that we can realize as women, this is the system. This is the world that we live in. And once we see, like you can't unsee it once you see it.
No.
And then we can look at, okay, great. Well, if they're the forces out there that have the potential to hold me back, and I can understand that, and there's lots of tips and tools in the book for how we move through that, then we can also turn our attention to part 2, which is what's my work to do? And in that, in all of our research, a lot of other research, the number one issue that women say holds them back is their inner critic.
Yeah.
Right? So it's inner critic and it's confidence. The problem with just talking about confidence is, and we hear this all the time in workplaces, you just need to be more confident. Which is incredibly unhelpful, right? Like, what does that mean?
And confidence is a muscle as well. You've got to build it up.
Skill, right? Skill that we build. But the whole part 2 of the book is around the inner critic and really understanding it's one of the things I really want women to do their work on, which is what are the stories that I tell myself that keep me stuck where I am? The best definition I've ever heard from research about confidence is the ability to turn our thoughts into action. And the piece in the middle that keeps us stuck are the stories that we tell ourselves. So, is it, I'm a terrible mother. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Everything needs to be perfect. Like, what are your stories? And then using the tools to start to like unravel those stories, unhook from them so that you can start to be in your power, reclaim that power. And that's our work to do. We need to understand the context of that with the world that we live in and the workplaces that we're in. But that work around our own empowerment and really understanding this narrative that I've got going on that's keeping me in place, I can do work on that. There's tools that I can use to unravel that and move forward. So yeah, it's both sides of that equation.
Yeah, 100%. I know from personally, I've done a lot of work with myself on the last 18 months, exactly in that inner critic mindset. I almost didn't go for a job because of that inner critic of, no, I can't do it. Someone else is going to go for it and things like that. Until actually, I'm very thankful for a colleague that was like, no, 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 no. What are you doing? Gave me the confidence boost, applied for the role and ended up getting the role. But it was one of those things that it's that inner critic. And now I'm so in tune with of going, okay, no, where's this coming from? Where's the story? What am I doing? Don't listen to it and being able to move forward. But, it's taken me till I turned 40 last year. It's taken me 40 years to
Yes.
get to that, but I'm still working on it every single day about that mindset.
Yeah. And we do, right? Like we do, I always say, like, there is no there. We never go, we don't arrive. There's no like golden tunnel and we get there and like, oh, we're perfect now. But what I found over my journey, and again, just working with so many women, is that the more that and there's one specific framework that I teach in the book around really starting to catch your stories, interrupting that cognitive dissonance with, asking like, is that true? To like break that pattern and then get to the truth of the situation and reframe the story, and others, and also understanding what is your archetype of your inner critic. And you'll get to this when you read the book, but there's 13 archetypes. And the more that we can really understand the nature of our inner critic, like, are you the perfectionist? Are you the people pleaser? Are you the good girl? Are you the ideal mother? And that everything in your inner critic is setting you up for failure around those stories about being the ideal mother. Are you the overachiever? There's 13 of them. The more that we can understand and get specific, the more specific we can get with the tools and the strategies that we can use.
Yeah. And you talk a bit in the book as well about mentorship and also networking. How important do you think this is to support women, working through this and to help them thrive?
And so I talk about specifically mentors and sponsors from a career perspective. We know that women are over mentored and under sponsored. We know that when it comes to career success, whatever that success looks like for you, whether it's you want, a more senior role, you want more flexibility, you want to go do some study, whatever it is, that sponsorship, and specifically male sponsorship, is like a slipstream path to achieving your goals. So those things are really important. I think from a mentoring perspective, getting access to someone or, multiple people who've done what you want to do or know what you want to know, it's a fast track. And that could be a physical person. It could be a podcast that you listen to. It could be a book that you read. For working mothers, it could be, oh, this juggle is killing me. Who's done it? Like who's someone maybe at work or in your community who looks like they're further along in the path or they've got it nailed. How do you have a mentoring conversation with that person? It could be in the workplace. You want to move into a different area of the business. Who's the mentor? I think we all understand that. The sponsor piece, in research we did last year, 64% of women don't have sponsors. That's a staggering number when it comes to careers. And we also know that men have more mentors and more powerful mentors in workplaces who often turn into and act as sponsors.
Yeah.
So they kind of get this double benefit. Whereas women, what do? Head down, get the work done. My work will speak for itself. I'm too busy for all of this politics and I'm just going to get it done. And we suffer because of that.
Yeah. We often try and rely on our work ourselves. I know I'm guilty of it.
Yeah.
And really, you've got the men big noting themselves and things like that. And you're like, really? But
Yeah. And
yeah.
connecting, right? Connecting, having conversations, saying, this is where I want to go next. How could you help me? And we're over here with our heads down doing the work.
Mm.
And sometimes that serves us and it's very noble, but it doesn't always pull us through to have the careers that we want to have. And, I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but in our Voice of Women at Work research last year, it was a staggeringly high number. It was something like 74% of women feel like they have not met their potential at work and they are unfulfilled. And these relationships can really help with that, right? Because that's what can get us access to opportunities and get us the support to do what we want to do.
Yeah. And it's not always the networking after 5. It can also be during work, having those conversations as well.
Yeah.
And I know I've experienced this as well personally. It's also articulating what you want to do, of actually stepping
Yes.
into the opportunity, because sometimes we may just mull it around in our head, but as soon as we verbalize it, you're like, ooh, I've actually told someone this is what my ambition is. Am I actually overstepping the mark, or is it possible? And men will just like the usual job application, they've only got 20% of the skills, but they'll go for it. Meanwhile, the female will feel like they've got to have 100% and then they'll go for the job. So that mentality as well, actually stepping into their true selves, is so different between male and female and the roles.
Yeah. And it comes back to that clarity,
Mm.
right? Like, what is it that you want? What do you want your life to look like? What do you want your career to look like? What could be the next 3 potential things that you would be interested in? Who can help you? We're so shy about asking for help and support as women because we're so capable and we just get all the things done. But when it comes to certainly support at home, absolutely, and support for our careers and our goals at work, knowing what they are absolutely is number one. Or knowing who you can go and talk to try and help you figure it out, which could be those mentoring conversations, working with a coach, being in a program community, whatever that is for you.
Yeah. What would you like to see as well from organizations to actually support women, and also, I guess, really cut down some of the systems and the patriarchy that are around? What do you see that can be done more?
Oh, there's so much. I would like, number one, I would like organizations to get very real about where they're at and what they're doing and what they're not doing and what their culture is. I I think it's very easy in very busy landscapes, which are organizations, and I was in them for 18 years. I know I work with 600 plus organizations in my business, to tick the box, right? Oh, yeah, we're doing a women's leadership program. Oh, yes, we're doing, we've got some targets over here, and right. And we just go tick, tick, tick. And we have a million paper cuts of good intention. But when you really look at what's happening, and the data will tell the story a lot of the time, particularly around attrition or stuck pipelines, what's actually going on, and to listen to the women.
Mm.
The first thing I always say to the men, which is the second thing that I would say to organizations, is where are your male allies? What are you doing for them? And every man in your organization in a healthy culture is a male ally for
100%.
inclusivity, particularly for women, right? Is I say to men, go and talk to women. Just ask questions and listen for the answer. What's it like for you working here? What was your experience coming back from maternity leave? How is it being a working mum? And tell me about that juggle. Yeah. Ask questions, listen for the answers. And then for men to get the tools to actually be active allies. And then the third thing, and these are not necessarily 1, 2, 3, right? But 3 things is support your women. Like, support your women. We find that for women who come through the Women Rising program from organizations, they have an 82% intention to stay with their employer. Like, that's an attrition. That's incredible.
That's huge. Yeah.
So give women the tools through whatever mechanism you can do it to help them get clarity, to find their purpose, to be confident, to be authentic leaders in whatever role that they're in, and to be truly well and set up environments for women to not burn out, because we have a pandemic of burnout.
100%. And it's
I
only
think
getting worse after the
it's
actual
only getting worse.
pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would then your advice be into women? I know that probably your top three for career leadership and life success to help them thrive.
Number one, take care of yourself. Sounds so simple, and it's not. Can be
Probably the
really
hardest.
probably the hardest thing. And what is the smallest thing that you could do that would have the biggest impact? So by that I mean, is it your sleep? Right? Is it really lasering in and focusing on getting the best quality sleep and the optimal amount of sleep for you? Arguably, that is the number one thing for all of us. Incredibly difficult with, young children, with babies, if you're caring for somebody, etc. But what is the smallest thing or the one thing that you can do that's going to have the ripple effect on everything else? That's where we start for our well-being. When not let's go do all of the things. Pick one thing, get that, and don't underestimate the power of small changes and small moments. If you can't meditate for 20 minutes, sit for 5. If you can't go for an hour's walk, go for 10 minutes. Yeah. What are those small incremental changes, and what do you need right now for your health, well-being, mental health, restoration, renewal? Number one. Number two, get clarity on what you want. How are you defining success at this season in your life? Do you know what you, ideally would like your life to look like, your days to look like, and all of those pieces? Spend some time. You don't need a week on retreat. Have a couple of 30-minute blocks in your calendar over the next month and really think about it. I can give you a free resource people can download. It's called our Possibility Planner that can sort of guide you through some questions to help you think about that. And then the third thing that I would say for career and leadership success is to really understand your inner critic. Understand the limiting narratives and stories that you have that are holding you back from doing what you really want. Once you figure it out, this is what I want my life, my career to look like, then we have to remove the blocks we're placing on ourselves and do that work. So well-being, clarity, inner critic, and confidence. They'd be my 3 main things to start with.
Amazing. I know there's so much there, and obviously so much more in your book as well to help you work through that. Is there anything else that off the top of your head, I know you could talk about this all day, so could I. Any tools, tips, advice that you've got for women navigating the juggle of career and motherhood?
Yeah, look, if there was one thing that I would say, it would be stop being so hard on yourself and give yourself some grace, because we do beat the crap out of ourselves. Even if we're not aware that we're doing it, when you really start tuning into your thoughts and your inner critic, and for those who get the book, you can go into your archetype. We're so tough on ourselves. And it impacts everything that we do. It impacts our families, it impacts our jobs, it impacts how we feel and how much power we are in as women. And, again, that's why I'm so passionate about the inner critic work, because once we start to see the way that we speak to ourselves and the stories we have about ourselves, again, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And when we can sort of soften into that and have compassion for ourselves and find the grace there, that's life-changing, and it may not change what's going on around us, but it absolutely changes who we are and how we feel in our lives. So yeah, some softening, some grace, some self-compassion, some self-kindness, and also just realizing that if you're in a tough spot as a working mama right now, just know And I wish someone had said this to me when I was in my toughest moments. Like, this is just a moment in time. This is not the rest of your life,
Mm.
right? Like, and find your people, find your community, find the things that can support you to get through it. But this is not forever.
Yeah, great advice and great tips. Now, it's something I know that you ask a lot of people, and I would like to finish off with this with you. What is your vision that you have for your life?
My vision for my life, I love that you've asked me that. No one asks me that question. I ask myself that question all of the time. My vision for my life is that I can live a simple, contented, connected life and do my purposeful work in the world to support millions and millions of women. And that can feel like a paradox, right? Like, that can feel like a conflict. But, I live a simple, people don't believe this. I live a really simple life. I have a small circle. I have simple days, and it's doing my work, doing my spiritual practice, spending time with my family, connecting with my friends. Like, it's a simple life. And I've always longed for that. And I've very intentionally created that for myself. Sometimes it gets crazy, like launching a book and
Yeah.
you're out doing all of the things, but I'm also an introvert. Like, I need a lot of time. So yeah, simplicity, contentment. I'm a seeker. So I'm about to start my PhD in women's spirituality. I spend a lot of time reading and thinking and contemplating. And I'm very passionate about my work, helping women rise. So yeah, like that for me, that's my vision, that I can be healthy and well and vibrant and connected with people that I love.
Amazing. And second to that, what do you do to fill your cup?
Oh, so many things. I learned the hard way of what it's like to not have a full cup. So I have a non-negotiable morning practice that I do with, like being in nature, walking, yoga, meditation, and lots of other things I do in that space. Um, Other things that fill my cup, quiet time. Like, I need a lot of quiet, uh, which can sometimes be challenging because I'm so, out there teaching, coaching, doing all the things. Sleep fills my cup. I didn't sleep for the first 5 years of my son's life. It was not a sleeper, and it was me and him. So, I hold sleep in the highest priority. Time with my girlfriend, time with my son, who I'm blessed he still lives at home for now, at least. Um, and yeah, those connections, and my work filled my cup as well. But I have to watch that tipping point of being full and thriving in my work to too much. Yeah. So just navigating that balance as well.
Yeah, it's constant. It's not like you've ever got it all together.
Constant.
It's always things that are constantly moving and
Yeah.
the things to juggle around. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for such an inspiring and engaging chat. I could honestly talk to you all day about these topics. Where can people get in touch with you, follow Women Rising if they're not already, and also buy the book?
Thank you for asking. So I'm on all socials, Megan Dalla-Camina. There's only one of me, I think. So at Megan Dalla-Camina everywhere. Womenrisingbook.com for the book. And then megandallacamina.com and womenrisingcode.com are the two places I hang out and where you can see all of my work.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for, as I said, such an inspiring, engaging chat. Highly recommend going to get the book. So if you've just thought about some of these things that are setting off a few light bulbs as we've been chatting, highly recommend it, because also the book is really good and that actually gives you active activities to actually go away. So it's not just about telling you what you need to do, but actually getting you to also do some of that inner work as well, which is so important. So it's a really proactive book. So thank you so much, Megan, for writing these things, and no doubt helping thousands and hopefully millions of women along the way.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the work that you do, supporting all of the working mothers out there.
My pleasure.